once again. My name is Sister Susan Ladd, and I am a member of the Office of Campus Ministry at King's University College. It is my pleasure to welcome you to our Religious Life Lecture Series, this year's theme being Faithful Passages. This theme is based on Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI's Motu Proprio, the Door of Faith, which celebrates the 50th anniversary of the opening of the Second Vatican Council. While this letter is directed primarily to the Catholic Church, the call to live from and out of one's particular faith tradition is essential and necessary for everyone. King's at Western is a Catholic university college committed to the ongoing creation of a vital academic community animated by a Christian love of learning and the pursuit of truth. To that end, the Religious Life Lecture Series encourages and supports open inquiry in all areas of religious life. Over the past 12 years, our office has coordinated a variety of speakers, some of whom are scholars, artists, and activists, all to support and challenge our assumptions about spiritual and religious life in the 21st century. Therefore, we are pleased and indeed honored to be concluding this year's series with Dr. Tariq Ramadan, one of the world's top 7 religious leaders, whose approach to pluralism challenges us to look past what divides us, to discover the beauty of what we all share in common. Tonight's lecture is co-sponsored with the Center for Jewish Catholic Muslim Learning at King's, whose mandate is to provide forum and a resource center to foster and nurture the relationship between the 3 Abrahamic faith traditions through education, scholarship, and community outreach. This lecture will be videotaped and made available for your viewing pleasure in about 2 weeks' time on the campus ministry link of the King's University College website under the Religious Life Lecture Series. And if you have trouble locating it, just give us a call at King's and we'll be sure to direct you to the right place. We greatly appreciate your free will donations this evening, which this year are going toward helping campus ministry address and meet the ever-present and urgent needs of our student body. Lastly, a limited supply of signed copies of Dr. Ramadan's book, The Quest for Meaning, will be made available for purchase at a cost of $22.50 immediately following this evening's presentation. And you can purchase your books just outside of this main room. I now invite Dr. Kadar, a member of the board for the Center of Jewish Catholic Muslim Learning, to formally introduce Dr. Ramadan.
Thank you, Sister Susan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Peace be with you. In the name of God, the Lord of mercy, the giver of mercy. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. It's a pleasure and a privilege to introduce to you this evening Dr. Tariq Ramadan, who is one of the leading public intellectuals of our time. It's always a challenge to introduce people of Dr. Ramadan's caliber. To do him justice would take far too long, and I'm sure you prefer to spend your time hearing from him rather than from him. So I will be brief, but I'd like to make a couple of points before inviting him to the podium. Dr. Ramadan has contributed to our understanding of our world and the people in it. in significant ways. His work and his writings had enough impact that he has himself become a subject of study for several authors. His writings cover an impressive range from spirituality and morality to the philosophy of Nietzsche to international politics and conflict. But the area that is of most interest to us today, and perhaps the one that he is best known for, is the understanding of inclusion and the building of inclusive societies. In this matter, Dr. Ramadan has been a leader and a visionary. Today, there are many who have jumped on the bandwagons of youth radicalization, multiculturalism, and integration, and a variety of other buzzwords. Too many people who wade into this discussion do us all a service by viewing the problem from a perspective of fighting terrorism, combating violence, preserving a particular culture and identity, or any of the many narrow prisons fostering clashes with the separate other, purely for communities. Dr. Ramadan stands out because he has been a student and an advocate of the evolution of societies and communities, by creating atmospheres of belonging and mutual contribution. He has emphasized respect for human dignity and positive freedom, and he has been doing all of this using the same language, advocating the same approach, evolving the same thought, and countering the same negativity for almost 2 decades. Driven by a genuine positive vision rather than reacting to temporary fears or passing facts. It is this integrity that has stood Dr. Ramadan well during difficult times. And it is this integrity that I hope we will all find inspiring again this evening. So without further ado, I invite Dr. Ramadan to the podium.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In the name of God, most merciful, more beneficent. Thank you so much, Dr. Haddara, for this introduction, and thank you for inviting me here. I'm impressed by, I was coming to a small city, and I just want also to thank the organizers and very much for their commitment and the will to make it possible for us to meet this evening and to share some thoughts about the way we have to deal with our truth, our one truth in pluralistic society. So I will try to stick to the topic and talk about the dimensions that are important when it comes to the way we deal with our religion and religious references within our pluralistic societies. But let me start with something which in fact explains why I'm here. It can be that you are teaching in universities, you do academic work, and very often we think about degrees and getting some knowledge and also titles coming from within academia, and we meet with citizens and we talk about our challenges. But as much as it's important for you to come to listen to interesting talks and thoughts, I think it's time also to reconsider the way we are listening. Because we are not talking about something which is far from us. We are talking about daily life. We are talking about pluralism in our daily life. We are talking about the very essence of democratic societies that are in danger today. And they are in danger because we have mindsets that are driven sometimes by populist statements, very simplistic understanding of the world, this us versus them mindset, and very simplistic answers to complex issues. If we have problems, it's because of you. And we have people targeting immigrants, or it could be Muslims, as much as yesterday it was Jews. It's always the other. Populism is a problem. And narrow understanding of our reference from a religious viewpoint, it's a problem. So we can come here in a very passive way, listening to a talk, but I'm not here to share with you something which is accepting you to remain passive. Now it's time for citizens to wake up and to understand the very essence of our beliefs. You can be an atheist, you can be an agnostic, you can be a Hindu, you can be a Buddhist or a Jew or a Christian or a Muslim. Whatever is your background and your belief, if you are consistent with your principles, you can't be passive with what is happening in our society. You can't. You simply cannot just look at it and say, I don't care. Consistency with our principles means to be active within our society. To be active means to change mindsets, to reform understandings, and to change the societies for the better. So I'm not here to please you for 1 hour. I'm not. I'm here to challenge you for a few minutes. You and myself, and all of us, our conscience, our principles, our consistency with our principles. So let me start with a few points that I want to make as an introduction to the discussion. And when it comes to the very topic, one truth within a pluralistic society, we need to acknowledge the fact, and this is the first point, that any one of us who believes in one religion or one truth or one principle, it could be for the Muslims the oneness of God, which is the central belief in Islam, at-Tawheed. There is only one God, no other deity, no other God, and you cannot worship but Him. This is one. If you come from the Christian tradition and your specific relationship to Jesus, it's also something that you cannot deny as central in the way you think about salvation. If you come from the Jewish tradition, the same with this oneness, monotheistic tradition, and the way you deal with this relationship, which is this original contract that you have. If you come from other spiritualities, at the end, we should all acknowledge that for every believer, woman or man, this is truth. This, I think, is the universal truth. There is no point for me saying I'm a Muslim if I don't think that this is the truth. So we are in a situation where the very essence of religion and spirituality is to teach the followers and the believers, this is the truth. And if you belong to it, you think that this is the truth, meaning it's not that the others have no truth, but I intrinsically, naturally think that my choice is a choice of truth. And we have to start with this, not denying the fact that there is conviction, there is something which is deep in our heart and deep in our mind. Why should we start with this? Because there is something which is coming in our modern time. It's as if the more you doubt, the more you are open-minded, which could be a dogma, and a very dogmatic way to deal with the truth of the others. So it's not because you believe in one truth that you are going to be dogmatic, and it's not because you doubt that you are not going to be dogmatic. Dogmatic has nothing to do with the truth. It has to do with the way you deal with your belief. And we have to be quite clear, there is a dogmatic way to impose doubts onto people today. If you don't doubt, you are not open-minded. I think that we have to start with the very essence of religion and say, okay, no, it's not about doubting this truth. I can doubt myself, but I deeply believe in God. I deeply believe that Islam is the ultimate and the final religion. The point is not to deny this, to be open-minded. And this is the second point. In fact, what is important is not to deny the fact that we believe that what we are worshipping, or the way we are worshipping, or our religion is the truth for us. Is to come to what this truth is saying about the truth of others. That's the point. The point is not to deny that I think that this is the truth, but what does my truth say about the truth of others? And this is the point which it's essential here. Because if you deny in order to be open to say, no, it might be not the truth, no, that's, many people, for example, and we have to also congratulate the Roman Catholic believers here, because there is a new Pope. And with the last one, many people were, I had a dialogue before he was the Pope with Cardinal Ratzinger in Germany, and with many people in the Christian tradition. But there is something that you may agree or not with him, but the way he was dealing with his tradition was based on consistency. I believe that the Roman Catholic Church is the truth. So he was consistent. You may agree or not, but he was clear, and he was not scared of saying it. And he said it many times, and he said it to Protestants and to Anglicans in the way that sometimes was shocking. That's fine. My point is not to deny that this is intrinsically logic with what he thought and what people... The second point, it's important. What your truth or the way you deal with your truth is saying about the truth of the others. Are you denying their right? Are you denying that there might be some truth in what they are believing or not? So you are not more open because you are not consistent with your truth, but you might be less respectful in the way you deal with the truth of the other. So don't diminish your belief in order to be open-minded, but question the way you believe to be open-minded with others. Openness is about the way you deal with your own truth, not by denying the fact that this is your truth. I'm saying this because conviction and commitment to one truth is something which is essential. And some of the people, when we come to our situation in the West, for example, very often, to show that you are able to deal with democracy, you should be less a believer. And even with the West, in order to show that you are Western, you should be less Muslim to be more Western. I'm sorry, it's not going to work like that. To be deeply, fully Muslim, and at the same time in the West, exactly the same with Christianity, exactly the same with all the traditions. Deeply rooted in your tradition, this is my truth, now how do you deal with others? And this is what we have to talk about. And I don't agree with people who are pushing to a state of affairs where you are not dealing with this truth in a way which is consistent, which is deep, and sometimes making you feel that you have to doubt it to be open-minded, as I said. The third point, which is important, which is connected to the second point, is when it comes to the very deep understanding of our religious tradition, because this is where pluralism is going to be challenged, or pluralism is going to be experienced, is what your truth is telling you about your relationship to truth. And this is where it's important to come from this understanding. And you find that this is coming with all the traditions. the deep teachings of all tradition is this: you belong to the truth, but truth does not belong to you. And this relationship with truth is starting with this intellectual humility. And it's based on what? In the way you deal with what is the ultimate truth for you. So if it's God, you believe in God, God is the truth, but you are not the owner of this truth. And very often we have it in the Quran, that sometimes from the very beginning it is said, learn, read, اقرأ, read. But when you read, you should know that the first call is for you to get this knowledge. And the fourth revelation in the Quran is saying, starting with one letter, Noon. And Noon you can't know what is, you don't know the meaning. So it's a call for intellectual humility. And you find this everywhere. In the Islamic tradition is, even with your daily life, عَسَىٰ أَن تَقْرَهُ شَيْئًا وَهُوَ خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ. It might be that you hate something and it's good for you. Why? Because he knows and you don't know. So it's based on deep faith in his truth, doubting yourself as to knowing everything about him. And if you start with this within the community, this is where you should learn to be less judgmental with others. Because you can't do this. You can't do this, and this is something which is an important dimension when it comes to this relationship with God, relationship with destiny. And if you listen to the Buddhist tradition, it's all based on this, a deep sense of humility. So one truth doesn't mean that you can be arrogant. This one truth everywhere is teaching you humility. And if you want to live with others, humility is central. No pluralism with arrogance. Arrogance will be something which is a position of power. This is why I don't like the concept of tolerance. In history, tolerance was necessary because the philosophers, Locke or Voltaire or all the philosophers were talking to power. And they were telling power, you should tolerate. But when it comes to common life, equal citizenship, no tolerance, respect and mutual respect. Because tolerance could be an arrogant way to accept the other. It could be patronizing. It could be a position where I tolerate you. And who are you to tolerate me? It might be that you think that you have the truth and that the truth belongs to you, not that you belong to the truth. And this is something that is coming from within our tradition. So what I'm saying here when it comes to one truth in pluralistic society is everything is coming from the center of every tradition. What the tradition is telling you about yourself. Is it teaching you intellectual humility and spiritual humility at the same time? Is this what you get? So this is why our first struggle to deal with others is to deal with our own people. Is within. Is the way we deal with the inner diversity that we find in our respective tradition. And this is where, we have a story in the Quran which is an important one. It's so important that it was taken by people beyond the Islamic tradition and we don't even know this. You may have read a very short novel from Voltaire called Zadig ou la Destinée. Zadig ou la Destinée is a novel that he in fact took from the Quran. It's the story of Al-Khidr and Musa alayhi salam, peace be, and Moses. And Moses thought once that he knew everything. He is the messenger, he is the prophet. And God sent him someone who knew more than him. And he went through steps. First, he broke ships, and then he killed someone, and then he built a wall. And he was asking, why are you doing this? Don't ask. Don't ask. I told you don't ask. And after the third situation said, now it's time for us to separate. You asked too much questions. But what does it mean you asked too much questions? That you didn't acknowledge the fact that you are unable to get it. So your journey towards God should be based on accepting that you follow the truth, but you don't have all the answers. And even in the way it's written, I don't have time to go for this, but this is the story of intellectual humility and deep spirituality. Put your trust, keep on thinking. Put your trust, keep on asking, but with humility, knowing that you will not get everything. So this is where, in our way of dealing with education, is going to be instrumental, it's going to be essential. If we want to live together, it's coming from the heart of our tradition, not at the periphery. To sit down and to say I'm open-minded doesn't mean anything. Because it's in time of crisis that you will see that your openness is true openness. You know, to be open with no problems is too easy. To be open when we are dealing with the reality of our daily life, this is where we can see if it's deeply rooted in our tradition. And the last thing which it's also important, coming with one truth, that you will find that as I keep on repeating, and this is why it's quite complex in our society, and even for you now living in Canada, is that these principles and this truth, it might have come from spiritual tradition in India or in Asia, with all the tradition with no transcendence. In the Hindu it's more transcendental in many aspects. But in the Buddhist tradition, transcendence is not there. And the way it has been built is a set of principles, an understanding of life which is rooted in specific culture. And you will find the same with all the monistic tradition. And even with atheism and agnosticism, it's also rooted in specific civilizational history or civilizations within history. And this is where it's also important not to deny the fact that when we deal with one religion and one set of principles, we deal with cultures. Because, as I'm putting it, there is no religion without culture. There is no culture without religion, but religion is not culture. So the way this truth is going to be translated into culture means that when you deal with it, you should understand that one truth is celebrating cultures. If not, it's not universal. There could be no universal message which is not celebrating diversity of cultures. If this is the case, it would mean that the only project or goal of a religion is to its uniformity of culture, which is not possible. Universality of a message with principles is celebration of cultures. You also have to deal with this. Because if now we live in Canada and the people who are here are saying, I'm an atheist Canadian, or an agnostic Canadian, or a Jewish Canadian, or a Christian Canadian, or a Muslim Canadian, or the opposite, or a Buddhist Canadian, if you say this, it means that you acknowledge the fact that your truth, your principles, are taking the Canadian cultures as positive input and positive contribution to the way you deal with the truth. So it's the way we also deal with the way of life. The way we deal with what is a product of collective psychology, of history and memory, but with one caution, and I have to be very cautious. Many things in cultures are good, but as much as human beings could be good and bad, many things in cultures should be questioned in the name of your principles. So as there is no religion without culture, but still religion is not culture, we should question our cultures in the name of our religious principles. Always. Why? Because we get used to things, culturally speaking, that could be very bad. We think it's good, and we think this is us. But sometimes our history is making us accepting things that could be questioned. And any one of us who is now a Canadian Muslim or a Muslim living in this contemporary world knows that many things, many problems that the Muslims have today have nothing to do with Islam. They have to do with cultures. And many should understand that what is now the most powerful means that the populists are using in the West to make it possible to fear people or to target immigrants is based on a way to deal with culture with a narrow understanding. This is us. This is our culture. You don't belong to us. So culture could be used to open and culture could be used to close. Exclusive or inclusive. This is why you have to be critical. So you need to get this relationship to truth and principles in the way where you are always aware that your cultures are necessary, but they are necessary to help you to be open as much as they can be the danger for you to be jailed in this intellectual mindset. And it's not easy, so you can get it from the very beginning. Yes, we are talking about truth. What we need to know is what our truth is saying about others, and then in which way truth is telling or teaching us that we have to deal with it. We have to deal with God. We have to deal with the very essence and the very meaning of life. And the fourth dimension is our relationship between truth, principles, and cultures and way of life. These are essential questions. And any one of us here, whatever is your background, this is critical in your daily life. And you have to ask yourself, what is your relationship with the fact that you can believe in God or say there is no God? In which way you deal with the truth of the others, and in which way you deal with your own belief, and then how do you deal with your culture? Because wherever you are, asking people to be Canadian by culture is good, if we all understand that being Canadian by culture means to be critical by necessity, in a constructive way. Not to reject, but not to accept everything, because not everything is good in this dimension. Having said this, you can find and think, wow, it's a complex starting. And it is. It's not easy. We're not talking about something which is easy in the way we deal with it, but we have to start with this understanding. In the book, The Quest for Meaning, Developing a Philosophy of Pluralism, I was trying to deal with all these issues about pluralism and in which way we can deal with this. And what we have crossing all the tradition is, willing it or not, we have to deal with diversity. And diversity is the reality of our life. It's true as to our cultures, it's true as to our languages, and it's true as to our religions. And in fact, it's at the same time a danger and a necessity. You have in the Quran something which is said which is essential here about diversity. Understanding that this is as necessary as the very meaning of creation. وَلَوْلَا دَفْعُ اللَّهِ النَّاسَ بَعْضَهُمْ بِبَعْضٍ لَفَسَدَتِ الْأَرْضِ. If God has not put a set of people, the world or the earth would have been corrupt. Meaning, in fact, that this diversity is what is making us, or what is making possible to live and not to corrupt the world. Because absolute power with human beings is the end of our life. We need this diversity, it's a necessity. And as much as its necessity here, you can come to the very old metaphor that you can find in the South Asian spiritualities about the way that there are many paths coming to a center or coming to shared universal values. And in fact, I use in the book the image of the mountain, saying there are many paths going to the summit. The summit is where we are sharing values. But there is this necessity to understand that there are many ways, many paths to go towards these common values, these shared values. But the fact that you say from the very beginning that the only universal values are shared universal values, it means that your relationship with truth is, I don't get it all. It's not me. Truth is God, and I look at the mountain from the valley, never from the top. I don't look at the mountain as if I was looking at it from the sight of God, because I'm not. I'm looking from the valley, understanding that there are many paths. And this understanding is something that you find in the Buddhist tradition, you find it in the Hindu tradition, and you find it in all the monotheistic tradition. Be careful at the way you look at truth and where you put yourself as to this relationship with truth. Understanding that diversity is necessary is the way you have to deal with it. And this is rooted in our tradition, even if, and you have sometimes to repeat this to Muslims, even if you understand that your religion is the last religion in the monotheistic traditions, still the last revelation is telling you Christianity and Judaism are going to stay. And they are here because it's the necessity of life. You have to deal with it because it's good for you. In fact, the fact that they are here and challenging your truth is good for your truth, or the way you deal with truth, not for the truth itself, because God does not need this, but for you, the way you deal with truth, it's important. And this is where we have these shared universal values. So when you come to this understanding, you understand that the starting point of the way you deal with one God is not going to be with the way you deal with people. It's not in the way I deal with Christians or Jews or Buddhists or Hindus or atheists. It's first the way I understand my own reference, my own way of dealing with truth. And this is where, in the dialogue, in all the discussions that we have, for example, in this organization, institution, and everything, I have been involved in interfaith dialogue for almost 30 years. And I ended up saying, look, it might be that what is needed is up to the line, it's upstream from the dialogue itself, is how the people who are involved in dialogue should try to question themselves as to the relationship they have with their own religion, their own spirituality, their own set of values. And this is where, as I said, if diversity is a necessity, it's a necessity for what? Because diversity is going to teach you humility. And as I said, it's diversity which is teaching you humility. If you look at diversity as, I don't get it all, and what I get from people from other traditions is helping me to understand better my own religion. It's a way where this diversity is helping me to get more knowledge. And this is also what we have in the Quran. وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلَ لِتَعَارَفُوا. We made you tribes and nations in order for you to know each other. So diversity is calling for knowledge. Because there is diversity, you need knowledge of the other. And knowledge of the other is what makes you go from a tolerance with authority to mutual respect with knowledge. Tolerance in a state of authority, that's over. Mutual respect with knowledge. This is the future. This is the way we have to deal with our fellow human beings, whatever is their religious reference. So, humility is something that you will find just go to all the traditions, try to study all the traditions. You will always find this humility means I am in need. The first humility is I am in need of God. I need Him. The second is I'm in need of you. You're helping me to be better. You're challenging me. Your questions are my struggles. And my struggles are the way I'm improving. I'm struggling. And this is what we find also, وَلَوْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ لَجَعَلَكُمْ أُمَّةً وَاحِدًا وَلَكِنْ لِيَبْلُوَكُمْ فِي مَا آتَاكُمْ. Look at this. If God had willed, He would have made you one community. But in fact, He's testing you as to who is acting or behaving the best. That's the point. Diversity as a challenge, teaching you humility and understanding it's a competition for the good. And this is where you are challenged. So this is what I said. The way you deal with your truth, what your truth is telling you about the others, they are a necessity. And they are the mirror through which you will look at yourself and improve. They are helping you to be better. My difference with you is helping you to be better myself, if I understand it in a constructive way, as a necessity of life. And you can say this with everyone, your friends, everyone. You can see that their difference, the fact that there is something which is challenging you, is helping you to get this. But it's not enough. Humility is necessary. Respect is a condition, but there is another thing which is important. If you believe that this is true, if you believe that this message is the truth, and this is consistent with any religion, as I said, the fact that you belong to the truth, but truth does not belong to you, it means that you should always assess the gap between who you are, what are your principles, and what you do. In fact, the very essence of you not being like me is sending me a message with my consistency. So humility and respect, there is a third condition, which is self-criticism, monitoring. In the Sufi tradition, it's known as something which is centered, in fact, in the mystical tradition is al-muraqaba, but we have it in the Christian tradition, we have it in Kabbalah, we have it in Buddhist, is always check your behavior. Check your principles. What is the gap? And if you look at yourself and you look at the gap between what are your principles and your way you behave, this self-critical approach is teaching you humility and is teaching you to be less judgmental. The more you deal with yourself, the less you judge the others. Because you know how much you are not exactly meeting your goals, meeting your principles. So this is the deep spiritual teaching. Instead of being judgmental about the others, and you have it in the Christian tradition, come back to yourself and judge this. You know, it's something that we should do on a personal basis. This is something which is us. You look at yourself and you know. Even the meaning of sin in the Islamic tradition has nothing to do with something which is the original sin. We don't have this in Islam. It's very simple. You know what is sin? Is what is in yourself. It's troubling you. Why are you troubled? Because you know that what you do is not exactly what you think. What you do is not exactly in the light of your principles. And you would hate the people to know what is in yourself. This is sin. Sin is this trouble, this gap between who I am and who I should be, between you and yourself. It's not to be exposed, but that you know it. This is helping you to get this humility. You understand this, and you start with yourself, and you stop judging the others, because you know how much you are far yourself. And this is far from what? Truth and principles. So this is the spiritual understanding, which is deep, deep in our heart and should be deep in our mind. And I would say, you know this? This is what also our societies should do. Very often when I'm traveling around the West, many people are saying, why is it the more difficult, what is the more difficult country for Muslims to live or for people of faith? And you know, we are comparing. Is it better in France or in Germany or in Britain or in Canada or in the United States? And I would tell you, I don't care about where, you know, people are saying very often, you know, in Canada is much better than you always can find a country which is not as good as yours, depending on what you are or what is your, you know, parameter to compare. But at the end, this is not what you should do. At the end, what you should compare is the gap between the Canadian principles and the Canadian practices. Compare the country with its principles. Don't go and say, oh, but you know what, in the States it's worse. And so what? Or you are going to say, oh, in France, it's so bad. It's good in Canada. That's fine. That's not the point. The point is, are we implementing in our policies, in our social life, the principles that we are advocating? At the end, this is the point. The point is the inner contradictions. So when it comes to this inner understanding, this assessment from within, this is where we understand what is necessary here when it comes to our involvement with others. Humility, respect, and respect means knowledge of the other, and then self-critical approach, monitoring ourselves, and dealing with our truth in a way which is based on humility, self-assessment, and understanding what is lacking in the way we deal with it. And this is the starting point. This is undermining anything that has to do with arrogance in the way we deal with that. And the last thing which is important is our understanding of something which very often is a deep question. If I ask you here now, you are all advocating interfaith dialogue, isn't it? That's good. We should talk to each other. We should. Christians, Jews, Muslims, that's the monotheistic traditions, at least they have to talk together. And then we have to talk with atheists. And we have to talk with agnostic and Buddhist and Hindus and whatever. You all advocate this, isn't it? Now I have a question. You just sit down and you think about it. Why? Why are you so sure that it's good to talk? At the end, if someone is coming to you and say, you know what? I have the truth. So why should I waste my time listening to you? I'm right, so you are wrong. It could be an arrogant position. And if someone is telling you, you know what? I'm going to talk to you. I'm going to listen to you. But at the end, what I want is for you to wake up. Just realize you are wrong. So some people are coming to interfaith dialogue saying, it's dawah. Dawah means converting them. So I'm ready to listen to you for a while, but then I have something to tell you. Which, by the way, between you and me, it's the truth. So, you know, from a very open discussion about interfaith dialogue, we should go deep in this. Why are you sitting? Why are you talking? What is your purpose? What do you want? Once we were in the UK, and someone who was a specialist, you know, bright specialist in Islam, he was talking to a Pakistani professor, and he was telling him, what do you want? Do you want me to convert to Islam? Do you want me to accept Islam? This is what you want? And the professor looked at him and said, yes, of course. Of course, that's the best thing that can give you. It's my faith. And he was shocked. He said, okay, so what is the purpose of the dialogue? And we shouldn't pretend that we enter with complete, sincere goals if we don't talk about it. And this is where we'll find in all the monastic traditions, if we go deep in this, that at the end, dialogue, it's based on mutual knowledge, to know more about the other, to help us to be better ourselves. So my dialogue with you is not to convert, because this is between you and God, it's not me. But what I want out of this dialogue is two things. A better knowledge of myself and you, of you and myself. It's a two-way process. And what I want you to help me to do and to be is a witness. A witness. And what is a witness is, I have no power to convert you, and it should not be. It's not my business. It's not my business. I cannot convert. We have it on all the tradition. Of course, this was instrumentalized, and this was not. It was, religions were instrumentalized to impose. We all know this. But at the end, let us forget about history and come to the principles. In this dialogue, what we should be for the others and for the other people is witness. A witness is someone, a woman or a man, believing in his or her truth and then trying as much as she or he can to be truthful to her or his principles. Try to show me out of your behavior that your truth is there. So it's a question of be self-critical with yourself, but try to be consistent with me. It's how do you deal with this? وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا لِتَكُونُوا شُهَدَاءَ عَلَى النَّاسِ. We made you the community of the middle path in order for you to bear witness to your message. To bear witness is what I'm expecting from a Christian, from a Jew, from anyone. I'm not expecting you to try to convert me, and I should not try to convert you. But what I should be in this dialogue is seeking knowledge, being witness. Being a witness. Showing that my message is transforming me. Don't talk about faith, just show how faith is transforming you. Is doing something with you. Is making you a better human being. But not with talks, but with behavior. And this comes from getting knowledge, transforming behavior. Because at the end of the day, revelation is about this. Getting knowledge, the revelation, and transforming behavior. This is it. When the Prophet is saying, for example, in Islam, I was sent but to complete, to transform the good character. Meaning, لِأُتَمِّمَ مَكَارِمَ الْأَخْلَاقِ means the purpose of all this, you pray, in fact, to change, to reform yourself and to reform your behavior. And this is the way you should be in interfaith dialogue. So when it comes to our way of dealing in pluralistic society, every one of us, even if you don't believe in God, but you have principles, show me your principles out of your behavior. Show me how you are consistent. And I can tell you that I met in the West, but in Muslim majority country, some people who might say, I don't believe in God, but the way they deal with principles is much more consistent than people who are saying, I believe in God, but they are not consistent. They are not witnesses. They are just talking about it, not translating it. And you will see that all our religions and spiritualities are saying, show it out of your behavior and your presence. This is the way we should deal with truth. And our truth in a pluralistic society is to get this two dimensions, is knowledge and being witness. Now, to come to the second part, which is also my conclusion here, is when it comes to this, this is where, and this is why we need to have interfaith dialogue and intercultural dialogues. This is where you learn a lot about what is coming from others, what they have to say. You get this, and it's helping you to be better and to get more and more humility and respect and self-criticism. I started my life, and this was surprising for my father, But once I would remember this all my life. When I told him I'm going to South America, he said, what are you going to do there? I said, I'm going to, I was involved in solidarity work. I was very young. And at the end he said, go and learn. And I can tell you something, it's there with liberation theology and liberation theologians at the grassroots that I saw how much they were talking about love and how much they were talking about solidarity. In fact, it's there that I came back to myself. They helped me to learn more about my religion and to be able to say, it might be that Muslims are not talking enough about love, not because there is no love in Islam, but Muslims are obsessed with rules and forgetting the meanings. And these are in South America, Christians who helped me to come back. So they helped me to be better myself, because I saw them serving, and serving not only for the sake of charity, but what I got from them is, I love, and when I love, I want justice for human beings, not only charity. Charity is something which is good, but charity without justice, there is a lack of dignity. Charity with justice, and justice is the way you show solidarity. So I got to say, wow. Came back and say, okay, I might have to come back to my roots here. Because I met witnesses of what the true message of Christianity was. And they were sending me a message, telling me two things. Get knowledge and be a witness. Knowledge of yourself and the other, and witness from who you are and what you believe in to others. This is where we start the journey. Now, we also have to ask ourselves, that's fine, this is who I am. Now, my message, my religion, my spirituality has objectives. What do we have to do with this? Why? Why? This is a deep question that we, in the book, The Quest for Meaning, I'm saying that we need to reconcile our students, and in fact, every one of us, not only because every one of us here is still a student. And if you forget to be a student, come back to study. To be a student is, to be a human being is to be a student. And to be a student means that we are seeking knowledge. And what I'm trying to say is that we need to reconcile ourselves with 4 disciplines. The first one is history. The second one is philosophy. History is how things evolve. Philosophy is why, the deep question of life. Religion is what type of answer religion should be studied more. And the fourth one is arts. Arts and imagination and cultures. We need to reconcile ourselves with the knowledge of arts. And you will know why, I will come to this. But just these 4 disciplines are critical, and we are now so much focused on efficiency within our studies that we forget history. We have a very superficial sense of history. Philosophy, the big questions are lost. Studying religion, we say to our students and we say to our kids, you are free to believe in not, and we are bringing them nothing about true choice. And as I'm always saying, there is a contradiction in terms between being ignorant and being free. By definition, ignorance is not freedom. It's the opposite. So we have here to reconcile ourselves with this and these disciplines, and then also as something which is part of cultures and celebrating imagination and creativity. This is something which is part also of living together. You don't live together only with principles. You know that sometimes it's not out of an intellectual dialogue that you can live with others. It's when you are sharing meal, eating together. Eating together as to principles is teaching you sometimes much more than to say, you know what, we are all for justice, let's go together. And we go for a while and then problems. But sharing emotions, imagination, feeling good together, this is central in pluralistic society. So this is why anyone who is telling you, if you get the passport in a pluralistic society, you are a member, is lying. The question is not law. The question is the common narrative, is belonging. to a story. A common narrative is our common story. Here we are, here is our imagination, here we are celebrating creativity. Here, celebrating creativity here is to be a citizen here. No citizenship without common creativity. If you don't share literature, it's going to be difficult to share passports. If you don't share literature, imagination, passport, we don't want to make it. It's not going to make it. It's not enough. But that's almost my conclusion, but before this, just something that I wanted to say is, okay, we are talking about truth and we are talking about these spiritualities and religions in pluralistic societies. And this is where we need to ask ourselves, what are the ultimate objectives? And you will see that on objectives, we very often share some objectives, the same objectives. And this is also something which is a methodology. You know, when you are dealing with intra-community dialogue, don't start talking to literalists or reformists or mystics or rationalists. You know, the reformist Jewish tradition with the Orthodox Jewish tradition. Don't start with the texts. Because if you start with the text, you are starting with divisions. We don't have the same way of reading texts. So if you start with this methodology, it's the best way to divide. So you take a text, say, read it together. And you think that because we are together reading the same text, it's going to produce the same understanding. This is the beginning of divisions. No, the text is saying this. No, the text has to be contextualized. The text has a reason. The text has an objective. And that's over. Divisions with one text. You might have to take another way and say, let's leave the text, and out of the text, tell me, what do you extract from the text as objectives? What do you want to achieve? And you will see that with the objectives, it's much easier to come to common agreement and common understanding. That if, for example, I'm dealing, it's not as simple as this, but it's easier as methodology. And you'll see that when you deal with Christians and Jews and Muslims, and at the end, something which is essential in all our tradition is to achieve peace. What we want is intimate peace, and we want peace with people. Peace is an objective, and Islam is calling us to Dar es Salam, the space of peace. And what we had in the Islamic tradition is Ifshu Salam, spread peace. But you deal with the Jewish tradition, in the mystical tradition, Christian and Jewish, in the Buddhist tradition, this is it. When we were, it was here in Canada with the Dalai Lama the last time we met. It was in Montreal. This was his call, peace. This is what we need, inner peace. And it means the well-being. So our objectives are always based about this. But we all know that peace as a final objective has conditions. And this is why, once again, we have to build on this. There will be no peace where there is no justice. If you don't make justice to all the dimensions of your being, you're not going to get peace. If you forget your heart, if you forget your mind, if you forget your body, anyone who is trying to get peace, forgetting and neglecting his or her body, is not going to get peace. No peace if you neglect your body. If you neglect affection and tenderness and love, no peace. There is no way you can get this. You need to get a comprehensive approach of all the dimensions. If you don't respect your mind, no peace. If you don't respect your heart, no peace. So peace is the final objective, but you have conditions, and justice is one of them. But to get this justice, there is another one in our society. And this is in all the tradition. Give me one tradition, give me one spirituality, give me one monotheistic tradition which is not celebrating education. And what is education? Getting knowledge in order to transform behavior. This is it, isn't it? This is what we have in all the traditions. So it's also a means. It's also a condition of peace, for peace. These are things on which we can find ourselves, say, this is where we are. Don't you think? In any society, and especially in secular society, why the way we have to repeat Secular societies are not atheist societies. Secularism is not atheism. Secularism is the way we deal with all these religions to help us to live together. But in a secular society where there is no state religion and there is no imposition, at least the religious presence should reconcile our societies with these objectives: peace, justice, education, solidarity. This is what we should be. So any society which is telling you be silent if you are religious, it depends which type of silence. If it's to be silent as to being dogmatic, imposing, yes, you can't be dogmatic. You can't impose. But if it's to propose and to share principles and objectives and a constructive presence by coming and being in this society actors and subjects and citizens promoting solidarity, justice, education in the name of peace, this is where we have. So it's impossible with this understanding to be silent in our societies. So this is where we are experimenting pluralism. It's coming with the objectives that we are sharing together, and that we can come in the name of our principles. You can be whoever you want, but tell me, what are your objectives? You want to get money? Do you want to get degrees? Do you want to get power? This is what you want? This is a problem. And this is where, as a citizen and as someone who is instrumental within my society and committed to some of the principles, I should make my voice heard. So, not to disappear, but to come with an ethical stand within our society. This is where our truth, with common objectives, could be positive in the way we deal with this principle, in the way we deal with this understanding. So, by saying this, there are two main questions that we have to ask. And this is something which sometimes is disappearing in our religious discourse. And religions now are challenged on this. Because as we all feel that we are threatened by the secular model, it's as if we are promoting more atheism and denying or neglecting religions. So in order to keep our religions, we come with a discourse on rules and prohibitions and obligation. And this is something which is natural. When you feel threatened, you start by saying, oh, what are my rules? How am I going to protect myself? And this is where we nurture a sense of victim mentality. We are victims. And if you talk to Christians and to Jews, to Muslims, to Buddhists, we are victims who might be victims, who may be lost in the whole process. So in order to avoid this, we come with prohibitions. And very often in all the societies, you will see that one of the dimensions that we have when it comes to being protective is about women. It's as if it's the weak link, supposedly, because it's wrong. We all know that the very weak link in the whole process is much more men than women, by the way. This is between you and me. We know that. This is the reality of it, that it's projecting onto women, saying we have to protect them. This is what happened under colonization. It's very much a discussion about protection and a narrow understanding of what the principles are. But there is something which is missing in our way of dealing with our religion in pluralistic society. Is at the end, if your objective is peace, if your objective is feeling good, there is something that we have to advocate again, that all our religions, as the essence of what is a human being, are dealing with feeling good and well-being. And this is something which is missing in our discourse, is coming to religion is as if you come to a universe of prohibitions and sense of guilt, not feeling good, not having all these positive dimensions of life that are necessary. When it comes to love, when it comes to stability, when it comes to psychological stability, inner peace, All this discourse means that we have to come with the religious discourse in our world, industrialized world, based on the very dimension of the spiritual teaching. How do you get this well-being? How do you get this feeling good with your own principles and with your own heart? Is the way you deal with the deep questions of life. Any society that is not tackling this dimension and not pushing us to think about well-being, love, affection, tenderness, all this dimension, dealing with our needs, not through being guilty, but through being human beings. This discourse, this positive way of dealing with this dimension, and the spiritual dimension, which is reconciling ourselves with the self, reconciling ourselves with the meaning, and being positive on the religious dimension, the spiritual dimension, not transforming religions into a set of rituals, but into a universe of meanings. This discourse is important, especially today, because there is a spiritual famine that we are experiencing. And we come with principles and we don't come with objectives, with this very deep dimension. And while I'm saying this, this is where it's important. When we live in Canada, and you are a Christian or you're a Jew or a Muslim, you need to celebrate the common narrative through this creativity. Why? Because creativity in the common narrative makes you feel good where you are. When you listen to music, and I know some scholars would say music is haram, illicit in the Islamic tradition, but when you listen to poetry, when you listen to things that are said in your language, that are helping you to get this creativity which is not against your principles, but helping you to feel good, this is where you can live with others. And you are exchanging. The encounter is very deep when it comes to tasting, feeling, emotions, and spirituality at the same time. We need to come to this. This is where there is a need for us to come to this dialogue. And I call it the dialogue of the centers, not the dialogue at the periphery. So this is something that we have to celebrate and we have to do in our society. And it's not enough. And the last point that I wanted to make this, so this is upstream, it's an understanding. And I know it's difficult because we feel victimized and we feel protected. But the best protection is not to hide behind rules, is to promote understanding and life. It's the opposite. The natural attitude is not the spiritual one. The natural narrow understanding could be very, very, a closed one, isolating us from the surrounding society, thinking that this is the way to be protected. And I think that this is not what we should do. We should come with another understanding with our fellow citizens based on these principles. And once again, I'm not saying we have to undermine our principles. We have to be very clear on the principles that we are celebrating, but not in the way which is principles to make us feel guilty, but principles that are helping us to be creative and open. But this is the last point that I wanted to make here, is that while I was involved all this year in interfaith dialogue, I ended up asking myself, okay, why are we talking? And I asked the question before. But where it's important for us to acknowledge the fact that yes, you believe in one truth and all what I said at the beginning. At the end, what is important within our societies now is to work together. It's not only to talk to one another. It's how do we deal and how are we going to be involved together. So it's a changing world, but all of us, what we got from our spiritual traditions or our religious traditions is a set of principles and ethics, specific behavior and ethics. And what our societies need today is citizens that are committed citizens, but with values and commitment towards their values. It's how do we apply ethics in our life? So where are we in our societies today? We have difficulties saying we believe in God, or difficulties talking about philosophy. But at the end of the day, in our dialogue, what is important now is to be involved together, not talking about each other. This is important, but it's not enough. What our societies need now is people who are ready to be committed and to be witnesses in the way they behave in their daily life. Meaning we need more ethics in social life. We need more ethics in the way we deal with justice in this society. We need more ethics in the way we deal with poor people with it. And it's not, as I said, charity. It's justice, social justice. Where are the citizens who, in the name of their beliefs and ethics, are not shy? They are not shy. They come and they say, I'm not going to impose onto you my belief, but my belief is telling me change this world for the better. You have to be an active agent of good in this society. Who, coming from the Christian tradition, or the Jewish tradition, or the Buddhist tradition, or any atheist or agnostic who has principles can tell me that this is not in his or her tradition? Who can tell me, no, I don't know what you are talking about? What I'm talking about here is a universal message of commitment to your principles. What is the point of having principles and to be a passive citizen? A passive citizen is a contradiction in terms. It's not a true citizen, the one who is a passive citizen, is a consumer. Consumerism is the opposite of what we find in our spiritual traditions. Our spiritual traditions are telling us be subject and active, not consumerist or consumers and passive. So this is where we have to stand up and say, yes, one truth, this is your belief, this is mine. Every one of us, we are committed and convinced. I'm deeply convinced that my religion is truth. You are yourself. The point is not this. Be a witness now in our society. Show us how you are committed to your principles by working together towards more justice, solidarity, and even this dimension, what I was talking about. Assessing, for example, our educational system. Are you happy with the educational system that you have in Canada? Can you tell me you're happy with what we are teaching? There is nothing which is lacking in this? So where are we? We leave it for the teachers and we leave it for the students, and we are passive parents complaining because it's not good, but not active to make it better? I'm sorry. There is something wrong in the way we deal with our way of dealing with our principles. And the only thing that I know is in all the tradition, the very essence is believe in what you believe and show it out of your good deeds. الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. This is what we have many times in the Quran. Those who believe and do good deeds. So this is what I find in all the traditions, because this is the objective. This is where we can be in a pluralistic. So anything which is pluralism around the table, let us talk about interfaith dialogue. You are kind, I am kind. And you know how it ends up. A number of specialists of interfaith dialogue that are meeting everywhere in the world, and they are saying, yes, we are talking to each other, but they don't need it. They are specialists of dialogue. And they are not reaching the community. They are not doing the job. So it's up to us now to come with, okay, we talk and we do. And we do together. And we create, transversal and crossing the board challenges for us to come with others. We learn from each other and we come and we are able to say, yes, we need more ethics in politics. Are we challenging the lack of transparency? It's true that we can look at southern countries and at the end you can say, yes, there is a lack of transparency. Do you think that there is transparency in our system in the West? Ethics in politics? Ethics in economy? When you see what is happening? We don't want religions to impose onto the state decisions. Do you agree with transnational corporations imposing into the state decisions that you are not making? Is this the way to respect citizens? Don't we have to say something about that? And I think that this is the way our ethics and our principles should help. And as I said, also in cultural terms, in arts. Arts is not entertainment. You know, if you listen to Nietzsche's philosophy, the way he was talking about music, you know, the only thing that he was happy with Socrates was that at the end of his life he started liking music. This is the only thing that I will forgive him. All what he did was bad, but this was good. He liked music. So I disagree with Nietzsche, but he is a point here. If you don't deal with culture, if we don't deal with imagination, if from your spirituality you don't deal with this way of dealing with your narrative, the way you deal with elevation, art should be an elevating factor, not destroying. Not destroying. Look at the music that we have now. Is this a music that is helping you to be better, or just to forget about who you are? Which type of music we have now? Which type of arts? This is a critical question. You can't just be a Christian and a Jew and listen to this and say, modern world, let it be. Yes, let it be and disappear. Let it be and disappear. It's a resistance. It's something that has to do with celebrating, and I would say that as a conclusion, it's very demanding. Very demanding. It's not easy. It's very challenging, and this is why we need to be together. And at the end, the only thing which is a danger in our pluralistic society, coming from all the traditions, the only thing that I fear is the dogmatic mind. And the dogmatic mind is the mind which is looking at things in a binary way. Us versus them. I'm right, so you are wrong. And I find this among Muslims, I find this among Christians, among Jews, among atheists, among human beings. By nature, you can find this kind of dogmatic mind. So we have to resist the dogmatic minds and populism by being able to celebrate this in a way which is important and daily. It's a mission. It's a meaning for our life. Let me give you an example, and I will end with this. It's not only in Canada. It's a world view. It's something that has to do with the way we deal with people. Are you realizing that slowly the way we deal with human life is becoming problematic? If you look at the international media and the coverage, can't you feel that in the way we deal with what is happening in southern countries, or even with people that we know, for example, in Africa, Africans that are dying every day, in the Middle East, people dying every day, don't you feel that there is something which is very dangerous? It's as if, without noticing it, the life of these people seem to be less valuable than our lives as Westerners. Don't you feel that there is something completely undignified in this? That you can count thousands that are killed, but if one is killed from our people, that's unbearable. If this is going to happen with globalized media, and we are accepting this is the starting of something which is the undignified attitudes, is to give to some people more value than others. How come could you deal with humanity if you accept this? So it's not only in Canada, it's not only with the poor Canadians, it's worldwide. To be the voice for this dignity based on our principles. And I would say it's time not only to talk, it's time not only to listen and to come to me after the talk and say, wow, good, come next year. It's difficult. These are difficult times. And Canada, as all the Western countries and all the countries around the world, is in need of committed citizens. True believers, whatever they believe in, true believers, meaning witnesses and committed citizens. This is the way we deal with ourselves in a pluralistic society. To tell me that you have the truth, okay, most welcome. To show me how truth is doing, what truth is doing with you, this is what I'm expecting. Thank you.
We now have some time for some questions. And there are two microphones in the two center or the two side aisles here. So if you have a question, if you would just come now and line up. That would help me just to facilitate this, see how many folks regard the questions. And I believe the microphone should be on.
Can you hear me?
Great, okay. I'll go till about 9:30. If that's
I
what
took
you
too
like.
much time? No, you can add a bit more. Okay. We'll try to find 30 minutes, it's okay. Okay?
Thank you, Dr. Ramadan. My name is Mohsin, and I am a graduate student at the University of Western Ontario. My question to you is, what would you say to non-Muslims, and by that I mean primarily those with Christian and Jewish traditions, and perhaps even atheist traditions, who might question why should they show humility when their truths led to the age of enlightenment, incredible progress, and have elevated humanity more in the last 2 centuries than ever before in human history by anyone. Does that fact not give them the right to claim that their truth is superior, that their truth is approved by some higher power, and that Islamic truth is irrelevant?
Okay. You want me to say yes? No, I think that the assessment itself is wrong. I wouldn't go for this conclusion that all what we have in the West is thanks to Christianity and Judaism. I don't think that's true. Or even if you look at this, the achievement in sciences, you can take another side and say, okay, how many million people, how many people have been killed and, are now the victims of what was produced by the West, for example. I wouldn't say that truth has to be assessed in what history is bringing us. So industrialized societies are not showing anything which can be said, this is coming from Christianity and this is truth. And I would tell you something, that true and committed Jews and Christians, they are not happy with the state of affairs in the West. They are struggling as much as Muslims are struggling and others. So truth has nothing to do with cultural, social, political, and technological improvement and progress. Truth has to do with behavior, principles, ethics. And if you look at the world, no one today can advocate or can claim that he can show that his or her tradition is showing the best ethical teaching and behavior. So once again, the best way to answer this would be, we all might get this intellectual humility. It has nothing to do with progress. It has to do with respecting human beings. And we all have to get more progress on this. This is what is lacking. So I wouldn't go for that. I think that this is not proving anything, because in the past it was, civilizations are up, you have ups and downs, and it doesn't prove anything. Yes?
I'm George Crone. retired from teaching in the Religious Studies Department at the University of Windsor. There's a book by Paul Hawken called Blessed Unrest, in which he points out that people are organizing all around the world. Hundreds of thousands of organizations are arising at the local, regional, and international level to deal with various issues involving social justice and environmental protection. And without having any conscious unity, they're becoming aware that they're sharing a common concern for creating a viable world order in which we can live in harmony with each other and with our environment. Now, these people come from the whole range of religions and languages and cultures. They certainly express vast diversity, but they haven't really focused on interreligious dialogue. But interreligious dialogue could emerge from this, but they have bypassed interreligious dialogue. How important is the interreligious dialogue when people are already involved in working for a viable world order?
I think that this is a good point, and it's not mutually exclusive. We need interfaith dialogue, and it's good to have it. And you know, in every, you know, what I'm advocating, for example, from my experience on this, is we need national movements of local initiatives. So let it be everywhere. Now you have people who are working on the ground and doing the job without even talking about dialogue, and they are doing the job. What is important is always to improve what could be improved. And for example, sometimes people are working in the field and they are segregated. They are with their own people. It's Christians with Christians for Christians, and Muslims with Muslims for Muslims. I think that this is something that we can improve. We can get the sense that we can do things together. So in the book Western Muslims and the Future of Islam, I'm advocating the third stage of our organizations, which is not based on our religions but on our objectives. So we can improve. So we can do both at the same time and push this to something which is instrumental, because many people, and this is, by the way, it's good that you are raising this, because it gives us also a sense that many people, millions of people are doing good things on the ground, and we have to celebrate this. And by celebrating this, it's also a mirror. If we don't do anything, it might be the time for us to stand up and to start doing. So I agree with you, and I think that this is important.
You spoke about intellectual and spiritual humility, and a little bit about culture and questioning. And if I understand correctly, and inshallah do, it becomes more a matter of asking the right questions instead of just asking questions. And my question then becomes, how do we know when to accept intellectual and spiritual humility, and when to continue to ask, per se, the right questions to increase intellectual and spiritual humility? So maybe to not cap our intellectual and spirituality by sort of accepting it, if that makes sense.
I'm not sure I understand this, but...
So about intellectual and spiritual humility, it's basically about accepting what we don't necessarily know, if I understood it correctly. And I want to reach that point, but I don't want to reach that point because I don't want to put a cap on my spirituality. So when do I know when to accept intellectual and spiritual humility?
I think it's not when I should accept it. We should always, it's not to accept it, it's to nurture this. But we should understand what it means, spiritual humility. Spiritual humility as intellectual humility is just to acknowledge something. I talked about this in the Quest for Meaning and in the Western Muslims and the Future of Islam by trying to get a sense of, this is very deep, in fact. Because there is something that we are not tackling, and I keep on repeating this, is we need to talk about our concept of human being. We go straight to our principles and we don't talk about this. Even, in the classical philosophy, in Socrates, and even in the Western tradition, We talk about soul and body and heart, and in fact we don't get that there are things that are completely different in our way of dealing with human beings and our understanding of, for example, what is the soul and what is the body, and in which way we deal with these two dimensions and morality. But the point here is spiritual humility and intellectual humility is to acknowledge something which is the starting point of being a human being that you are in need of. As a Muslim, you think that you are in need of God. As a Muslim, you think that you are in need of answers, and Iman, which is an answer to your fundamental question. As a Muslim, you know that you are in need of people. In fact, the best way for you to worship God alone is to be two. Why? Because marriage, for example, is half of your faith. So this physical stability is helping you to have a deep way of dealing with your heart. This is the Islamic tradition. Go now to all the tradition, you will find the same in Christianity. The need of Jesus in the Christian and Roman Catholic tradition, mainly this, is essential, the role of Jesus. You will find the same and everywhere you will find that the starting point of spirituality is always, I'm in need of. And when you get this, you talk about this humility, and you have to nurture this. And it's always, when you talk about your needs, there is no questions you have to avoid. Even the questions that could deal with your human dimension, never avoid questioning when it comes to your need. And for example, anyone who is true with spirituality and avoid talking about sexual needs is not true with spirituality. Because sexual needs are also part of our humanity and human beings. So we need to talk about this. This is where it was so much the case in the traditions, and in the Muslim tradition we are dealing with this. We are dealing with this in a natural way. It's only now that we are becoming so, disturbed about this, that we avoid talking about it. So no wrong question when it comes to needs, and talking about needs is to nurture humility.
My name is Ed Korg, and I'm an immigration and refugee lawyer. And first of all, I'd like to thank you for coming to London and sharing your vision and your message. And I guess we all need to learn humility with regard to dealing with both ourselves and others. But I know that Islam has a great history, and in fact embraced and protected many of the minority groups through the military system of the Ottoman Empire, through Dhimmi status. So a lot of the minorities are protected and owe maybe their existence to the fact to their involvement with this land, and were protected for centuries. But I think today we see that there is a hardening of values, and there is persecution, often on the basis of religion against people in the other. We have a Jewish state, we've got Christian minorities in Lebanon, and today we've had the Arab Spring that seems to have been hijacked by divisions within the Islamic world itself. And I'd like to hear your comments on the sort of almost the conflict between Shia Islam and Sunni Islam, and the divisions, and how that has been used, I think, to a large extent by outside powers to destroy societies. Like Iraq, I think, has been very much destroyed, Libya, now Syria. And the divisions within Islam have been utilized for that in I would say, in a destructive capacity. But I'd love to hear your comments on the internal divisions between Islam and this Shia-Sunni divide, and the fact that it's getting very dangerous and explosive.
Yes, thank you. There is something that I haven't tackled, but it's part also, and with your question, we are tackling it when it comes to, when we talk about diversity, it's not diversity outside, it's also diversity with it. And it is also something that is, when you have many trends. For example, you might like what I'm saying, but I'm not representing all the Muslims. And even some Muslims, they think that I'm outside Islam with what I'm saying. So the diversity within, it's important. In talking about the Arab awakening, I don't call it Arab Spring, and I don't think we are still witnessing revolutions. I wrote a book on this when I am tackling what you are talking about, and saying one of the main challenges for Muslims in the Middle East, but in fact not only, even in Canada, in the West, will be this relationship between Sunni and Shia. It's deep, it's really dangerous. Because we can say no, Muslims, they think that Shia and Sunni are Muslims. But what we have now, it's serious. People and scholars that I saw a few years ago calling for a dialogue, today are very, very tough on this. And it's very high, up to the, I'm not one to talk about names, but religious authorities are problematic with this. And on the other side, on both sides, so to speak. So we have something which is a division. And all what is happening now, I keep on repeating, every 2 weeks on my website I'm writing articles about what is happening. Never before I got the messages that I'm getting now, insults from people saying, because I'm against the regime in Syria, even though I'm not naive about the opposition, but I think that the dictator should leave. And I get messages saying, you are like this and saying this because you are the friends of the Saudi and the Qatari, because you are a Sunni, and it's playing the religious affiliation, sectarianism. And it's very dangerous, because you are losing your principles, and now you come with an understanding that you take this position only because you are Sunni and Shia. Add to this the divisions, for example, in Egypt now and in Tunisia, where everything is unsettled. The countries are politically unsettled and economically, in fact, completely destroyed and under siege. In fact, they are assisted economy. You can see what is happening in Tunisia and Egypt. And then what do you have? You have the Muslim Brotherhood or Nahda, the Salafi literalist, and you have also Salafi jihadists that are working, and this is nurtured from within and from abroad. So Muslims on this should be serious about that, because it's reaching Canadian or American Muslims in the way Shia and Sunni are talking and not talking to one another. And add to this the divisions from within, and in which way some governments are playing and instrumentalizing. Religions could be a means to deal with emotions and to be instrumentalized. We have religious populism. We have that. This is also something which is, religions is about spirituality, but you have people playing with the emotional dimension of the spirituality. And we have to be serious about this. So I wrote about this by saying, look, what is happening today, and even between the secularists and the Islamists today, we have this kind of polarization that is not tackling the main challenges. What we should tackle now in Egypt or in Tunisia, instead of having this struggle for power, is much more dealing with corruption, education, social justice, employment, economic stability, South-South relationship. We don't have this. And we are not going to have it because, as you said, we need to study what happened in Iraq. Because it's not because we don't talk about Iraq now in the media that we should forget what is happening. In fact, it's a big failure. It's just divisions within. And people are being killed every day, and this political instability is also helping a very tiny group of people being like the old dictator, but behind the scene of a democratic, so-called democratic process, and divisions from within. And if we don't study this, we are going to be completely wrong as to our answers to the contemporary challenges. So what you are saying is really important, in the Middle East and for contemporary Muslims. We have to deal with intra-community dialogue, and to get it right, it's important. Thank you.
Thank you for next one.
My name is Yahya. I am Professor of Arabic Studies here at UWO. Part of my question was answered by your comment right now, but the second part that I would like also to give you a comment, you mentioned particularly that all heavenly religions are aiming towards peace, and no peace without justice. And now we see nowadays injustice is being committed, especially and specifically the massacres and inhumane massacres, unspeakable massacres, whatever you want to name it, in Syria. And the whole world is being silent. For example, Western countries like USA and other countries claiming that they are defending human values and they are standing by the oppressed people. Right now, our pain is very, very deep that what's going on in Syria is massacre against humanity and the whole world is being silent. I would like to hear it coming from you. Thank you.
Let me start by agreeing with you that that what is happening is unacceptable. Now we have a problem. You know, with what happened in Libya, when Gaddafi was saying about the people of Benghazi, I'm going to kill them, he meant it. He was going to do that. And I was in a radio program, the BBC, and this was the question: should we expect from the West to intervene, yes or no? My immediate position was no, the West should not. Support the resistance, but not to intervene. And what we were talking about at that time was no-flying zone. This was used after the United Nations resolution to go and for NATO to take over. And in fact, this was done, in my view, for geostrategic and economic reasons. It was much more about oil than about the blood of the Libyans, which, by the way, was confirmed by the policies afterward. But many people, and I was one of them, were not happy with France, Qatar, and the United States being involved in this intervention. Now we come to Syria, and the Russian and Chinese governments were saying, we are not going to give you the authorization that we gave you, and you cheated at us, so now we are not going to give or to support any kind of intervention. And I wouldn't go for that myself. So the question that I had from the very beginning is how, without being involved within the country, the Western countries and the power of our time, China, could help for this to end without being involved and without intervening. When I was in Tunisia and talking with the President Monsef Marzouki, he was telling me, we are trying to find solutions, but we have countries that are pushing for a clash. And he was talking at that time, he was against Bashar, he was with the resistance, but he was telling me, I don't understand why Qatar wants to give weapons to the people just to nurture a civil war and not to find another solution. So the situation is quite complex. If we say now to the West, you have to intervene, it means that we want them to be involved. And we say we should not intervene, but we should find another way to solve the problem. How? And this is problematic. So the position of principle is to do something which could be a pressure on the government and to try to get to put an end to this. But how this could be done is very difficult. And my last point on this is I'm much more cynical on this. I think with all what I have read and followed over the last few months, that unfortunately, there is something which is a very old strategy with the State Department dealing with South American countries and some African countries, is something called low-intensity conflict. Low-intensity conflict are conflicts within the borders of a nation. People are killing each other. It's destabilizing the country. It gives you a means for you to sell and to use this as to weaken the situation in the region. And in fact, if you look at the Middle East today, it's a very weak situation for many countries. Egypt, Tunisia, Yemen, Syria, Jordan, very weak, no stability. And with this, Iran is in a very bad situation, and Lebanon. In fact, in a cynical way, it's a useful conflict. And my take on this, if you just try to understand what is happening on the ground, because there is no oil in Syria, I would say that there is an agreement between the West, China and Russia, not to agree on any solution. Meaning it's going to last. And we have innocent people who are going to be killed. But there is an agreement not to agree. If not, something would have been done before. So this is where we have to raise the question and say something should be done, but I wouldn't say intervene, but try to find a way to put an end to this conflict, because it's unacceptable what is happening. Every day, not less than 170 people are killed. We know it, we see it, and we keep silent. Unacceptable. What do we do? Okay.
My suggestion is that they could speak with you after.
Okay.
Okay?
So I'm sorry, I will take only, let's say, 2 very quick questions, and then for the others, she said 1. I'm cheating at her.
Very quick one. First of all, with reference to your conclusion, I have to say that was good, and please come next year. And then my quick question is, since we know that all believers, the very common thing between all believers is that since they think they have the truth, so they want everybody to join them in their belief. So do you think that it's a good idea to spread the business concepts between active believers, is that to look at the others as their customers, their potential customers? So even if I invite someone now to join my belief and behind it, so he's still my potential customer, so I should keep a good relationship.
Wow. Look, I would say exactly the opposite. I wouldn't like this kind of terminology to colonize our religions and our interface relationships by talking about consumers or clients, or what was your word? Customers. Yeah. No, I wouldn't like this. I would like the opposite, which is instead of using consumers is to serve, to be at the service. It's to give. It's to. I would colonize this terminology with another type of terminology, but I would never think of a Christian or a Jew or even a fellow Muslim as a customer. A fellow human beings, someone that I have to serve, a companion of struggle. You know, when we were in Mauritius, We are dealing with Hindus, Chinese, Buddhist tradition. And we decided to use a concept that we have in our tradition in something which was completely different, say jihad against poverty. Jihad against poverty. So resistance and reforming. But no, I wouldn't go for this this type of efficiency with words like this. I don't like it. I don't feel good with it anyway. But it might be my philosophical background.
Maybe not agree with you, still friends, so thank you.
I will come next year. Yes, the last one, I'm sorry, and then we can talk together as I was advised, but you are the last one.
Thank you very much.
I'm sorry.
Your lecture was very nice about knowledge, diversity, and principles. But what I'm thinking, the real peace or knowledge, how we can establish without organize the community and without the leader. The real peace we cannot establish without organization, the community, or without the leader. Every individual, some people are right, some people are bad, some people think differently. We need a leader. That's why I want to listen to your comment. But the history shows how the God selected leaders. When Jews become divided into different sects, the God sent the Messiah, rejoin all them together and bring the real teaching that the peaceful. Same thing we are talking about the Shia, Sunni, same thing prophesied in Islam.
Okay. I got the point.
So these are the prophecies. The leader, the God sent the Messiah. And I want to listen to your comment. My understanding is that God sent the Messiah for the Muslims in India with the Ghulam Ahmad. My question is, why you don't do you? My question is from you. Why you don't accept him? So give me
Why don't I accept what?
Accept that Messiah.
Messiah?
Yes.
Me?
Yes.
Accepting what? Exactly.
I guess I rephrase my question. My question is, it's prophesied in Islam when the sect will become Shia.
Yes,
Sunni,
I got that. Yes. Yeah.
Then the reformer or Messiah will come. That Messiah will reorganize the Islamic community again and start the leadership.
Okay.
One person in India, maybe you have heard or know, Mr. Ghulam Ahmad, he claimed that he is the Messiah of the Muslims.
Okay.
Just like the Jewish Messiah was Jesus.
Okay.
So you are a very intellectual person, and have you studied about that one? If you have not studied, then I am not sure why you have not studied about his claim. If you have studied, then why you have not accepted that Messiah? That his claim is he is from the God.
I haven't heard about him. But no, I haven't. But let me tell you something. Because beyond your question, there is something which is also a question, and we'll end on that note. You know, our understanding that we have to be united, it's the problem of the leadership. And yes, we have a problem of leadership. Now, I don't think it's going to come with this type of claim, I am the Messiah, you have to follow me, because this is adding divisions, because he's not going to be followed by all the people, and this has to be checked. I didn't know about this, but this is not the point. My point here is that we have many leaders among Muslims, but there is a lack of leadership. As a sociologist was saying this, he told me this once in Belgium, is Daceto. He was telling me, I went to this Muslim community and I met so many leaders, but no leadership, no vision. And I agree that we have this problem. Now, how can we do this? Some Muslims, and it's true also in other traditions, but especially these days with Muslims, It's as if we are expecting a kind of charismatic leader that is going to show you or show us the way. You know, the problem with charismatic leaders is that they are charismatic. And it's not leaders that are based, vision and something which is dealing with people, is that they have some qualities and we follow this out of emotion, and we think that, and when they disappear, the structures, the grassroots thing, we should not expect and follow charismatic leaders in such a way. Sometimes they can do the job for a while, but the leadership, I would say now, needs to be a bottom-up delegation of authority. Much more based on our common understanding. I would prefer a kind of leadership that is coming in such a way to avoid, we are idealizing people, we are idealizing scholars, we are idealizing leaders. We should stop with this. We should just now follow a message and not follow some people. So, claiming now that this is the end of time and that we have to follow the Messiah, I wouldn't go for this. But I think that there is a problem in the way we look at our leadership. And I would say yes, there is a crisis of authority among Muslims on the Shia side as much as on the Sunni side. And we have to deal with it in a way which is, before trying to get a leader, let us be good followers. And who are the good followers? People who can be potential leaders. This I would say is the point. I'm sorry, I didn't know about things, but we cannot.
That leader will be from the God, not from the people. These are the proxies of Islam. These are the proxies of Islam. If we reject this from this leader, we are rejecting the proxies of Islam.
That's your belief, but please, have you heard what I said during the lecture? Share with me. Don't impose. Share with me, don't impose. And don't tell me, no, please. No. Just one thing between you and me. Between you and me, just to stop. I might be wrong, I might be right, but in our internal dialogue, don't tell me that if I'm not following, I'm wrong. Just tell me I'm just lacking some knowledge about what you know. No.
And go together. You said we talk and go together. I want to go together. I want to talk and go together.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
I know the person of the people at the microphone. Perhaps after we're finished, Ramadan might have a few moments to come down and talk with privately. As we conclude our meeting,
You are going to talk?
Let's see. Who is the president of the Muslim Students Association, to come forward and express thanks to Dr. Ramadan on all of our behalf. Thank you. So just to recap, we were all given the privilege and the blessing and this opportunity to listen to Dr. Tariq Ramadan talk about, the topic, believing in one truth in pluralistic societies. As he indicated within this talk, that it's all about getting knowledge to transform it into behavior. How we can better ourselves and better our surrounding society. So without further ado, on behalf of the Center for Jewish Catholic Muslim Learning at King's University College and the London Muslim community, I would like to thank you all for coming here tonight, for listening to Dr. Tariq Ramadan, and special thanks to Dr. Tariq Ramadan for making it out to London, Ontario. And on behalf of the Center, I would like to give you a gift.
Thank you. Shukran. Thank you so much. Shukran. Barakallahu fiku. Thank you. Thank you so much.
This concludes our meeting. Once again, thank you, Dr. Ramadan, for your time with us today, for this evening. And thank you to all of you who've been a wonderful audience. Thank you for your presence.
policy